Good morning. Welcome to our final talk in this series, and it's appropriately named Only Hope. Because as we've learned during the previous 4 talks, there is a divine impulse back of all things, as Ernest Holmes would say. There's a divine hand in it all. And we've learned a new perspective, one which I myself recently realized, because I know I've said this over and over and over again, that there's a reason for everything, and there's a plan behind it all, but people continually come to me and implore, if the universe is love, and if that love has a plan, why is there so much suffering and so much pain and so much war and so much rage? If God is behind all of it, make it make sense, because I can't see it. And I've tried to help people see what I see. But what I recently realized is that God doesn't create pain. It doesn't create suffering, nor war, nor rage, nor poverty. But God doesn't waste pain, nor suffering, no war, nor rage, nor poverty. Though the universe is constantly, unceasingly conspiring to turn suffering into a catalyst for good. In fact, I think if you look at things closely, you will find the greatest example to prove God's love through tough times. I gave you several lighter examples last week, and several that weren't quite so light, but I want to share a couple of especially moving stories today, and I absolutely will. But we've got some other things to get through first. So I'm going to start with something that will seem a bit off topic, but which is actually instrumental in helping us get to where we never have to search for hope. Because we'll constantly be experiencing the moment. And in the moment when things are happening, there's no time to go into the darkness of your mind. Who here remembers the talks that we did on the elusive now from last March? That was actually a year ago. In fact, that was last March. It was more than a year ago. Those were really, really big and really incredibly important in ways which neither you nor I can truly appreciate yet. One would think that I have a crystal clear understanding of everything I'm going to say up here, and I can see how one might believe that, but one would be wrong. Because although my hands do the typing, I really just try to get out of the way and let things come through for you. God, that love, that joy that floats my boat, and all of your boats really, but God is amply aware that if I tried to sit down and think these talks into making sense, I would have never gotten through a full sermon, not once. No, and people who know me can attest to that. I can't focus for that long. Focus ain't my strong suit. We know this. And I believe I've mentioned that recently, right? I had ADHDs. And all of that meandering that I just did is proof of that. Because when I started talking here, I set out to tell you that we have a 5-week workshop on entering the sacred now, ready to launch. You see? When I am left to my own devices, if I try to teach from the little old me in here, we will never get anywhere. We'll just continue to meander until we bump into things. So this workshop is slated to begin the Saturday after Mike and I get back from our first cruise. That's on August 2nd. Saturday, August 2nd will be the start date. And I'm thinking that the start time will be around 10 a.m. and ending around noon, possibly with a lunch to follow each week. And I'm not sure what the cost will be. I'm going to leave that up to the board, because honestly, I have no idea what these kind of things should cost. But there's a workbook and journaling prompts. It's pretty comprehensive. And the cool thing is everybody can benefit from the tools in this workshop. This isn't a church workshop, okay? It is not coming from any sort of faith or religious perspective. This is about us. This is about humanity. And it's about everything else in the world. And it's paradigm shifting work, because learning to stay present really is the key to living a life where it's easy to see the love running through everything. So why am I plugging a workshop on the now in the middle of a talk on hope? It's because when you're present all the time, there is no reason to need or even begin to search for hope, because there will never be a moment in which you lose it. Hope is a thing which we try to grab and hold on to when we're thinking about the future, when we're trying to navigate through and not seeing the end. Because hope is something you use to get through your fear of never-ending darkness, right? And when you're here now, you aren't in your mind worrying about seeing through. There's no beginnings or endings in now. It simply is. And when everything happening in each moment, it just is. Worrying about past and future doesn't exist anymore, so you don't stress about any of it. Each moment is doable in the present. And we'll have workshops coming on quieting the ego and recognizing and moving past judgment and all kinds of those other life-changing things that we did a year ago. And those are set to keep us in what seems to me an awful lot like what I imagine bliss to be, if we get through all of those. But until we have those, and unless you participate, we will keep navigating these sticky situations that require things like hope here on Sundays. And what's cool is the next few series of talks are going to be big, powerful game changers. Okay? We are mastering trust. Then we're getting behind gratitude and what it truly means. It's a lot deeper than we think. Why that matters so much. And then we are going to gently surrender into presence. That's with a capital P. Okay? And all of those things, trust, gratitude, surrender, they can absolutely all be achieved with diligence and effort. But they're effortless functions of the present. Effortless functions of the sacred now, which if you come to the workshop, you will be fully rooted in. So you will find your life and your experiences transformed, because each of those series that I just mentioned is 5 weeks. So you're going to have the ability to come from a place of knowing and really ascend through it all. And that is something that I would love to see you teach the world as you move forward. Because yes, I absolutely want to see our amazing place here thrive. From the school to the church to our beloved apartments over there in the village. Did you guys know that all those apartments are also part of us? I will be thrilled beyond measure when this place is overflowing with people whose hearts and minds are stuck in the experience of now. So they're expressing love, which transforms every experience into joy. But what the world needs is for people everywhere to be that way. So lead others by your beautiful example. Teach others how to get here. Not physically here, although, again, that would be really, really cool. Okay, you may bring them for sure, but teach others how to get out of here and into here. But right now, here we are. And here we still have to figure out a way to navigate our way to hope during dark times of the mind. Has anyone heard of the author Andrew Solomon? No? Okay, his books are really extraordinary. He writes on psychology, specifically darker psychological states, politics. He writes really brilliantly. They're extraordinary, and I highly recommend that you look into reading some of his stuff, but we don't have any in the bookstore, so I recommend going on thrift books. And I bring him up because Andrew has struggled with debilitating depression. Have you ever dealt with that? Or do you know someone who has? Yeah. I'm going to say here that, folks, when somebody's down in that dark space, you can help shine some light for them simply by celebrating whatever they do accomplish that day. Even if it's something which you take for granted and seems insignificant to you. Did they remember to drink water? That's fantastic. Did they feed their body? That's huge. Did they get dressed? Because that is freaking monumental when you're coming from that place. You may think that I'm kidding, but getting dressed can feel like an insurmountable task when depression has someone's mind in its iron fist. This is the kind of thing that Andrew Solomon was dealing with. And Andrew Solomon said, Antonin Artaud wrote on one of his drawings, "Never real and always true." And that is how depression feels. You know that it is not real, that you are someone else, and yet you know that it is absolutely true. At the height of his depression, he described his world as narrowing to the width of a single thread. He wasn't just sad, he was hollowed out. He once said, "The opposite of depression is not happiness, it's vitality." And in his darkest days, even getting out of bed felt like moving through cement. He couldn't taste food. He couldn't hear music. He couldn't feel touch. People told him to take walks and drink water and think positively, but his depression didn't care about good advice. And he says that there were days that he stopped answering the phone. He closed the curtains. There were days on end, seemingly, that he didn't speak to another human being. And the worst part, he says, you feel like a burden just for existing. And yet you also feel like a fraud. You feel guilty for being so sad when others are worse off. So you hide and you shrink and you ache. But something in him refused to surrender to it. He sought help. He let others in. He wrote. He named the pain, and in doing so, it began to lose its power. Over time, slowly, and with 1,000 small steps, he came back to life. And then something sacred happened. He didn't just survive it, he harvested it. He wrote a book called The Noonday Demon. It is one of the most acclaimed books ever written about depression. It didn't just help others, it changed policy. It opened doors and it saved lives. He went on to become a fierce advocate for LGBTQ rights, mental health reform, and parenting children with deep differences. He became the kind of person whose pain had carved a cathedral in his soul, one large enough to shelter others. And when someone asked him if he would undo the depression if he could, he said, "It was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it gave me everything I value. I would not give it back." And do you remember what he said? The opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality. Here's the rest of that quote. The opposite of depression is not happiness, but vitality. And my life, as I write this, is vital even when sad. I may wake up sometime next year without my mind again. It's not likely to stick around all the time. Meanwhile, however, I've discovered what I would have to call a soul. A part of myself I could never have imagined until one day, 7 years ago, when hell came to pay me a surprise visit. It is a precious discovery. Every day, I feel momentary flashes of hopelessness and wonder every time whether I'm slipping. For a petrifying instant here and there, a lightning quick flash, I want a car to run me over. I hate these feelings, but I know that they have driven me to look deeper at life, to find and cling to reasons for living. I cannot find it in me to regret entirely the course my life has taken. Every day I choose, sometimes gamely and sometimes against the moment's reason, to be alive. Is that not a rare joy? Friends, it is clear to see that's not denial. That's clearly not toxic positivity, right? That is resurrection thinking. That is hope with scars. And that is the truth for so many of us. Not that the pain was good, but that Spirit never left us in it. That even in the deepest winter, something holy was planting a seed that we may one day call our greatest gift. And I have what I believe will be an extraordinarily powerful and transformative exercise for you all in a moment. But before I give you that, I want you to see very clearly now that God really does use pain. Use pain as a catalyst for good. The kind of good that our human minds wouldn't begin to have dreamed of. Not in our wildest thoughts. These things happen that we could never begin to imagine while we're wading through it. But Spirit moves through lives in every moment of every day in incredible ways. Now, you all heard that the Science of Mind group is delayed today because there's a board meeting, right? Okay. Well, at every board meeting, I have to give a senior minister's report. And one of the line items in my report is personal prayer hours. Those are the hours that I spend talking with people who are trying to navigate rough times. Hours I spend holding hands and listening, or helping to find resources and moving things into action, or just being there for a little while so that people can feel safe and held. And those hours are very, very high. Last month, I had 136.5 hours of personal prayer. Mostly in person, but sometimes over the phone or email or text or some semblance of all three. People are struggling. Politics have people in a constant fear state. That's what I'm hearing. And I am only going to say it once, but it needs saying. Stop paying attention to the news. It is going to happen with or without you, but if you're not paying attention, you don't have to suffer while it's happening or not happening, do you? Okay? So, back to the point. Everyone is in this state of wondering and fear. And that leads to hopelessness. And the thing is, our current brand of hopelessness, it stems from the what ifs. Okay, these things that are happening politically. So what if, insert the fear here, whether it's a cost of living issue, or a human rights issue, or a global conflict issue. They're all what ifs, right? They're all open ends that we cannot predict. But in other parts of the world, things have been far more real. Things have been so much more than what if. They have been brutal and visceral, and the universe really was working through it all. In 1994, Rwanda was torn apart. Oh, this gets me because I know people who were there. For 100 days, neighbor turned against neighbor, friend betrayed friend. Over 800,000 people were killed. Men, women, children. And that was the case with my friend who lost her child. The violence wasn't distant. It was intimate. It was carried out in churches, in fields, in living rooms. It was one of the most horrific genocides in modern history. And when it ended, the survivors were left in a landscape soaked in trauma. Entire families erased. Homes burned, communities shattered. What remained was a silence, thick and haunted and paralyzed. Many believed that the country could never recover. How do you rebuild trust after that? How do you ever feel safe again? Right? But something breathed beneath the ash and rubble. It didn't happen all at once. It wasn't clean or easy or fair, but something holy began to stir. Forgiveness, restoration, a radical kind of hope. Local communities, many led by women and spiritual leaders, they began creating what are now called reconciliation villages. In these villages, genocide survivors live side by side with the people who murdered their families. You heard that right. Not in theory, in reality. There are gardens planted together, homes built side by side, children whose parents were once enemies are now playing under the same roof. How? Because they chose to believe in something greater than revenge. Because they chose to believe in love. Because they were willing to ask the most painful and sacred question. Is it possible to begin again? And somehow, through grace, through grit, through divine mystery, the answer became yes. One woman whose husband and children were killed said this: I thought the rage would burn forever, but I asked God what to do. And I heard, grow food with him. So I planted tomatoes next to the man who took everything from me. And every day the sun rose and the tomatoes grew. And one day I realized we are feeding our village together. Rwanda is not perfect. They are still working toward greater political freedoms and human rights. But today, it is one of the most peaceful and unified countries in Africa. Not because they forgot, but because they remembered differently, because they rewrote the story, and now that very soil which drank blood gives life again. That kind of transformation doesn't come from logic, it doesn't come from policy, it comes from a deeper knowing. The kind that says, even here, even now, love still lives. Not because the pain didn't happen, but because Spirit never stopped whispering, there is more than this. And sometimes when we shift how we see, even just slightly, the shattered becomes sacred. The broken becomes beautiful. And that day that began this whole series, the crucifixion becomes resurrection. Friends, perhaps it is time we look again. We have journeyed together today through stories of sorrow and survival and pain and purpose, and now it's time to come full circle. To look again through different eyes. I told you a couple of talks ago that there was a line that I would return to from Alice in Wonderland. And now that moment has arrived. The Red Queen, surrounded by illusion and adoration, declared, "It is better to be feared than to be loved." She clung to control. She ruled through fear, but her power was hollow. When her illusion broke, when false appearances faded, she was left with rage and isolation. But Alice, through the love of her friends, Alice remembered who she was. She found her muchness. She stepped through the looking glass and chose a different path. And now so do we. Earlier this morning, during our meditation, you quietly identified a space in your life where hope felt absent. A place where fear, uncertainty, grief, or shadow has settled in. You didn't dwell in it, remember. You just observed it. You named it. You placed it like a stone on your altar of awareness. Now I'm going to invite you to do something sacred. You've got to pay attention here because the details are important. Down here, before the steps, there is a table. Upon it are rows of black unmarked objects. They are our version of the looking glass. Each one of those represents that shadowed lens, that space that you identified earlier, or spaces. In a moment, I would like you to mindfully set your intention and then come up and take one. Let it be yours. Quietly return to your seat with it. And then look through the lens and recognize the darkness and the shadows within. Point it right towards this tower and recognize the shadows. Okay? Acknowledge that this is the darkness and fear that can lead to hopelessness. I will not tell you what to do with your looking glass from here or what to expect from it. That part of the journey belongs to you. You may choose to leave it just as it is, cloaked and unknown. But you may also choose to look into it. You may choose to reveal what is inside. You may choose to look within the darkness of this looking glass a little deeper. And then you may lift it to your eyes and you may look again. And in doing so, you may discover that what once appeared to be covered in shadow, in darkness, has always been full of color, full of light, full of beauty waiting to be seen. It has always been evidence of that divine hand that's constantly leading us to our greatest good. Whether you choose to stay in the mystery and leave your looking glass as it is after you view it, or you choose to transform it, it's entirely your choice. If you choose to look within and discover something deeper, this is your choice. No one will instruct you. No one will ask what you saw. And please do not reveal what you saw to anyone sitting near you. Let them make their own choices and experience their own journey. Okay? Let this instead be a moment between you and the infinite. And now, when you are ready, please come forward in silence and select one. Then return to your seat and allow the mystery to meet you where you are. The light has always been there. Look through the lens. See the darkness and shadows. You may choose to keep the darkness and shadow. You may believe yourself to find comfort in them, and that's fine. That is okay. That is your choice. But you may also choose to change things. Again, please do not show your neighbor. Let them discover for themselves. All it takes is the choice to change something about that looking glass. Choose to alter some piece of it to unlock what lies deeper. It is yours. You can change it in any way you wish. There's one more piece on there, Ulf. There's one more piece in there. I see you looking. You got halfway there. Turn it around and look at the end. The other end. Yeah, hold on. The little piece that's stuck in there. Oh, it's a paper. Take it out. Yeah, pick the little paper out. Yours got stuck, I'm sorry. There you go. Yours got stuck. Remember, the darkness is just a cover. It can be removed if you choose to see it. That light has always been there. If you're trying to alter it and you can't figure out how, just let me know. Because I see some perplexed faces out there. And now, beloved ones, you have looked into your darkness. You have looked through it. You saw the darkness and the shadows. Some of you saw colors. Some simply held the mystery. All of it is holy. There was nothing wrong with the darkness. It was never a punishment. It was only a passage. And now you see clearly, God was there too. So we bless the journey. We bless what brought us here. We bless the eyes that are learning to see again, not with fear, but with faith. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light around me. The darkness and the light are both alike to thee. Let us take a deep breath together. And in this breath, let us quietly name what we are ready to see anew. Let us name what we are ready to release. Let us name what we are ready to become. And now, in this moment of stillness, with your looking glass resting in your hand or on your lap, feel the soft, quiet weight of transformation. It has begun. May you walk from this place not lighter with escape, but deeper with clarity, more whole, more alive, more you. And if times of darkness come again, may you remember that you hold the lens, that you can choose to look again, and that what you once feared may yet become the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. Go forth knowing and being love. And we say, so let it be, and so it is.